You've made it to from an idea to making it public. Easily keep track of your assets, asset development, and workflow management, or workflow manage your assets at least anyway. My name is Alex Homer. I have the pleasure of being your host today. I'm a customer success strategic program lead. Gosh, I keep my words today this morning. Today. Anyway, Kim is facilitating the session with us. She's a senior professional services consultant. I'll make sure that she gets to introduce herself properly in a moment as well. In case you're wondering, you're here for part two of this session, where today we will hope that you get to track statuses using dashboards and reports, get to use some automations, and familiarize yourself with the Adobe Creative Cloud integration. If you haven't heard about it yet, it is a great way to kind of keep track and manage your assets through Wrike, or work on your assets and keep track of its flow through Wrike. Before we hand it over to Kim, though, you may have heard of Monumental. They've come on board with Wrike with the challenge of having a lack of design-specific PM solution, disjointed creative request processes, and a lack of insights into the team's performance. So we gave them a pretty customized solution with some specific request forms that allowed them to streamline their intake funnel. They had an integration with the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite and Media Valet DAM, and of course, their workload management and reporting functionality. The result of this meant that they had reduced their admin time. They'd improved that workday efficiency by 640 assets created in a single quarter, up to 110,000 assets uploaded to Media Valet, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And of course, increased their task completion rates. We've got Laurie Mayers saying to us that we really do everything in Wrike, all the creation, all the approvals, all the feedback, all the publication. It's a pretty incredible story, to be honest. And to find out how the likes of Laurie's done that, I'll hand it over to Kim Cameron to introduce themselves a little bit better and, of course, take us through it.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex, for that introduction. Hello again for everyone who was here for part one. For those of you who are jumping in for the first time, I'll be the facilitator for today's session. I'm a senior professional services consultant, and I've been using Wrike since 2016. I take my experience using Wrike in a creative services department and beyond to help Marcoms teams just like yours get the most out of Wrike. Helping teams learn how to wield Reich with precision gets me excited for my day, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you today to take it into part two to talk a little bit more about how we took the creative assets that we started to build out inside the system and start monitoring and reviewing them, and then also taking, as Alex mentioned, a deeper look into the Adobe Creative Cloud integration and how you can leverage that to help your team reduce tech swap fatigue and be more creative. So with that, let me go ahead and get my screen share going.
And as you get your screen going there, Kim, I just wanted to let folks know that this session is being recorded, of course. You will have an opportunity to watch it again afterwards on Discover. We hope this session will take us about 45 minutes, but it could go up to an hour, depending on how many questions we have coming through. And of course, when it comes to questions, please put them through in the Q&A section of this. I will stop and interrupt Kim if I think it's an appropriate moment to ask her, ask her your very question. But yeah, please submit your questions in the Q&A there or in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to make these sessions interactive as possible. Over to you, Kim.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So let's just do a recap of where we were last time very quickly. The scenario we have in place is that we've matured in the system a little bit and we're getting a lot of print assets that we want to keep in track of. And so we created a custom item type to begin that process. So let's take a look at how we did that very quickly. I'm in my creative services team space. I am an admin of this location, so you can see the gear icon there. When I select that, I'm going to go straight to custom item types, and we can see the one that we made here last time we were together. It's the print asset. I've updated the icon here just a little bit, and I've brought in the print asset type custom field that we built to partner with this custom item type as well. So we're linking up all the different parts of the system here in the back end, and then we're also leveraging them inside of our blueprints. You can see here in this tab, I'm in the same location. I'm just over in the blueprints now, where I've created a folder to hold my print assets. And in here, I have a infographic, an ebook, some thought leadership. They're all leveraging that new print asset custom item type that we created, but each one of these has a slightly different duration level of effort that it takes to create them. So we're using that print asset type here through the blueprint to add that complexity so we can discern all of those different scenarios that we might need to have right there. We're linking this up with our request forms as well if needed for that continued automation for creating all our new print assets. Let me go into the folder structure here so we can take a reminder look of where we're at. We've got, I believe it's in the backlog. We're getting, oh, she's right there at the top. We can see here the one that we created through the request form where we've requested this specific print asset, some thought leadership here. If we expand the details, we can see that pre-baked data is coming through the custom item type and through that blueprint, which makes our lives a little bit easier here. And so now it's time to track some of these assets through the system. Before this call, I went through and updated some of our other assets so that we have some data to take a look at. So we don't generally expect folks to like dive into the folder structure and work in and out of the folder structure. That can be a little bit cumbersome, right? I've got a lot of items in here to scroll through, and if I'm working on just a handful of these items, that's not an efficient way to get through it. And so we really want to focus on leveraging our tools section up here at the top. If you're a team lead, if you're managing a group, if you're the admin of the space, we want to make sure that we understand that any tools that we put here, that we know our audience, right? Anybody who's a member of the space will want to have that context of what's going on. If you are not a space admin, you can still follow along with what I'm about to show you from your personal space here. Everybody has a personal space, and back here you can use the plus icon and choose the dashboard new and follow along if you want to, if you don't want to put it inside of an active kind of live space that you've got going on. For right now, I am going to work out of this environment. I've pre-made a dashboard in the interest of time. I can slow down though and go through each one of these. So I'd like to extend that offer to those of you who are with us right now. If you'd like for me to take a couple steps back and dive deeper into some of these widgets that I'm about to show you, please just send that through the chat, through the QA over to Alex, and he'll let me know which ones you might be interested in specifically, or as I'm going through them, if one pops into your head that you're like, Kim, I just want to see how to do a certain widget in a certain way, I'm more than happy to explore that with you on this call and see if we can take a deeper dive. Okay?
Yeah, please flick them through.
Awesome. So with that in mind, we're going to go into the print assets overview dashboard that I've made for this talk. All right, there's a lot of stuff going on in here. So let me show you what we have in the hopper here. So at the top, I'm using a good naming convention. You saw that all of my other tools are using CS for creative services because I may have shared this out with other people who are getting dashboards from more than one team. And we want to make sure that it's crystal clear that they understand what is going on with this dashboard. So that's a good prefix recommendation there as well. Okay, so this is my print assets overview. For that reminder context, this is going to be all about that custom item type that we created, Paw Print Buddy, and how we can track those print assets in a very targeted way. So with that in mind, the first widget that we have to see here is all of the active requests that have come in by CIT. So right now we can see that there are other CITs that are in the system besides our print asset one. And I wanted to give the context of we can create a variety of custom item types and use it as a filtering parameter to make sure if we wanted to get down to just the print assets, we could. We use that through the edit and the filter here in the upper right-hand side. And we have the ability to come in and say, I want to do just the print asset, right? And that brings it down to just that discrete item right there. And we can say, print asset request. Okay. So just a lovely little way to see the bigger picture of if you have a lot of custom item types, that you can kind of see that filtering happening and sorting there. Or in the case of this dashboard, if we want to make sure that we're very specific with the widgets and what we're showing and keeping consistency, we update that there. So now we can see all of our active print asset requests. Right below it, I've chosen to show this data in kind of like a table view. So here we can see all the different custom item types that we have in the creative services space. And as a reminder, right, I can double click into this and see the items listed there that are of that particular item type. So I really like working with charts from the dashboard view because of the ability to go right to that particular category and affect some change right from the system there. Next up, we have active print asset request by status. So similar to what we have over here, I'm just doing a grouping so that we can see it by the status now instead of by the item type. Depending on how your workflows are set up, I find that this is a pretty common way that teams want to be able to see things that maybe the team is actively working on, ideating on, concepting, reviewing versus things that may be out for review with either internal or external stakeholders. So we know that maybe some of our team has some bandwidth to pick things up, even though there's a lot of items with their name on it, right? So this helps us to be able to differentiate that. Again, we can double click into that information that is right above it and see some detail and affect some change if we wanted to from here as well, right?
Yep.
So question.
Good question. Got a question here. Wondering around, is it possible to see what assets are in pipe in the sense that what's coming up and when it's due? Like, could we have it grouped by a date or
Yeah,
anything like that?
absolutely. So that is, we're going to do a new widget up here at the top. Right. I'm going to dive into add widget as just my custom. I get all the bells and whistles when I do that here. And so for this one, this might be assets due in the next 7 days. I will pull up, let's see, I like the due date, but I also like to see the last modified date in some of this situation too. That lets me know if my team is touching stuff and actually doing things right. So it's reduces some of those status calls there. So I'm going to pull up who's responsible, what the status is, the name of the thing, when it was last kind of touched or modified, and the actual due date for the asset. And I'll want to like refine this. And so the way that I'll refine this is on the right-hand side. Let's I'm going to actually keep this really large and not specific to print assets because I want to make sure some stuff comes back and I don't look like a silly dilly for the demo. On the right, we're going to go to the
Hmm.
filters and we're going to come in and we're going to scroll down and we're going to see due date here as one of our filter parameters. If I open that up, what's nice is that in the dropdown, and it's a little bit hidden, you scroll down to the very bottom, we have the ability to do our rolling dates. So yeah, these are pretty discrete time frames, but down here at the bottom, we have 7 days ahead and 30 days ahead. As you can see from the title of my widget, which one I'm going to choose here, but just to have the conversation, the difference between choosing this week and 7 days ahead, and I'm glad that it's hump day so that we can have this conversation, is that this week is just going to show me everything up till Friday. So if I don't want to get a heads up on what's happening Monday and Tuesday, that's cool. I'm going to use this week and we're going to have that focus. But if I do want a heads up, that pipeline, what's coming down the road, maybe even further out, this is going to be a great way to set that parameter. Oh gosh, nothing even came back because everything's overdue. But this is oh yeah. All right, I'll take that one. Let's do here. Let's just do this. Just request due in the next 7 days. And there, now we can see that filter parameter has been put in. I'm going to say 30 to keep us real. We'll create that widget. And now we have that sitting here for us to take a look at, right? So that brings us to one of the great reasons why I love dashboards, because we can see time-based data, right, versus status-based data versus what kind of asset it is. So remember, I've been really beating that drum about partnering up a custom item type with a custom field. And this is one of those reasons why, right? We now can leverage this custom field here of thought leadership and go and pull all of the active projects that we have that are print assets. Yeah, that's great, Kim. But what kind of print asset? Maybe we've got different vendors that print different formats. Maybe we have horizontal or portrait or different templates that we're using based off of the asset type that we have. And see over here, I have another custom field about that format very specifically with regards to how this is going to play out. So the custom field paired with the custom item type here can show you how you want to keep it simple with the custom item types should you choose to use them. You want to add complexity through the custom field, and you can see how now if I want to if I'm a designer and all I work on is thought leadership, I can leverage the custom item type and the custom field there and see work that only matters to me in that regard. So here this column shows us that we've got 3, 1, and nothing for ebooks yet with regards to what are the print assets and what kind of assets are they that we're working on. Continuing to the right here, we're moving into the approval zone. So it's one thing to keep track of all of these other configuration parameters, but really when it comes down to creative teams and working with assets, even not just even creative teams, but anybody who needs an approval with regards to any documentations or the process that they're working at, we want to keep an eye on things that maybe have just come in and are getting ready to work versus things that maybe are hitting in a bottleneck, whether it's because they're an external stakeholder and maybe they went on vacation, or maybe the internal stakeholders are very, very, very busy, as we all are, and things can sometimes fall off our radar. Setting up a little bit of a safety net widget can be really, really handy, especially when it comes to talking about approval processes. So here we're able to get right into, specific to the CEO. Of course, I'm in the CEO account, so that's why all of this stuff is for me. But that is a nice way to keep that front and center. And then, of course, we've got the new widget that we just built there just now. Any other
Might
comments?
actually ask you to spend a second there, Kim, on the actual approval piece. And how do we potentially filter out specifically approvals? And are there options on approvals in the sense that are they on files? Are they on tasks? What does that sort of look like?
Okay, that is a wonderful question. So let's actually back it up a little bit and go into one of our tasks and start off an approval process. So let's go into the active creative folder here. I don't think I actually have any puppy feet in here. So let's also walk through that real quickly so that makes this easy. We're going to right click, right? And from here, oh, sorry, I can't do it from that. I can do it from over here. We're going to right click up here and we're going to change item. And I'm going to search for print asset PR. There she is. It's very easy to convert these over. We don't lose any data. Everything stays in the same place. We're going to see the UI change a little bit, which is going to be a little bit friendlier and easier to take into. And then we also take advantage of the other bells and whistles that I discussed on the previous call with when we get custom item types like a visual language alongside control of what custom item types we get at the top. So we've got a lovely test. Let's see here. We've got a print asset leadership, banners and graphics. Let's upload some pictures here. Go with Elaine and April and Angela.
I love that you've got Elaine, April, and Angela just ready to go there. That is awesome.
It brings me joy to see some of my favorite characters, and so I yes. And when we get to the Creative Cloud, you'll see some more of that. But so we've got our friends here loaded up for our thought leadership banners and graphics. And now there's in my head there's two very significant ways that we can kick off approval processes inside of Wrike. We can do it through a light version that I like to call, where we just are like, yeah, this is in review, and we at mention each other back and forth and we say, yeah, that looks good. Have a nice day. Or maybe we need to get a little bit more of an audit trail or a tracking, or just to be able to just see and understand when people are looking at stuff and approving things. And that's when we would kick off a Wrike approval process. And that is a very specific feature within the platform here. And we can access that through the add approval. Now, this is also showing its face when we configure status workflows. So watch for any sessions based on that. And also when we're setting up our request forms, we can add approvals in there. And then, of course, this is the most granular location where we can pull that stuff in. You can click the button and add approval. Now, this button shows up both at the task level, which we're in right now, and it also shows up at the project level. I don't know if I have any projects inside of the creative services team. Let me just dip out of here really quick and labor. That's very interesting. So here at the project level, we can also add an approval as well. The difference and when do you use one over the other, that's really going to depend on your team and your process. Again, for the creative services team here, they're very task-based oriented. They're cross-functional, so a lot of the work that they do supports larger campaigns, which are project-based. So in this case, they're really going to be attaching the items that need to be approved and reviewed at the task level. Now, if it's that you have a project like webinar and it's very cross-functional and everybody just wants to see one place to look for those approvals, then as a team through change management, you all need to agree that we do approvals at the project level, for example, instead of down at the task level. So those are conversations that you'll want to manage there.
That's a really important thing to note there, Kim, and thanks for highlighting that. I think it might also be worth mentioning that you can also approve a task or a project without necessarily having a file attached to it.
Yep, that's
Um,
very true. So
and so I
here
guess
we don't have to add
yeah,
that to what?
I was going to say, so it might be that the task itself is the uh, we have to do, right? The task will can have the description of here's this, here's that. We expect to have this. This is all the information that comes with it, and we're approving the task itself, right? This task, this piece of work can go ahead. I know we're talking about assets here, so I want to keep it back to that, but wary that it could be used in that fashion as well. That's yeah, perfect. I'll hand it back to you there, Kim, to kind of continue with what it might look like against tasks.
So to
Sorry,
his
and
point,
files, assets.
to his point, right? We can have just the task or the item go through the approval process, but if you want to add files and have the files that are in the task or project be part of the approval process, so it's very, very clear that it's these artifacts that I'm handing over to you that I want you to take a look at more specifically, then we'll definitely want to add them. We can even take it that one third option too, which is like, I don't even want you to look at what's in the description or what's going on here. I just want you to look at just the files. We're not approving anything about the step. We're just looking at the assets themselves, right? So we can get very granular with those nuances depending on your workflow and how you want to put that together. So up here, it's always nice to let people know what you're looking for when you're sending out an approval. So please don't leave this blank. Be a good Wrike citizen. You can send this over to myself or maybe brand manager Andrea here to approve. We can have more than one approver. The way that this works is that maybe we've got a couple of people that can approve this, and whoever sees it first, they're going to be the one that comes in and says, this is approved. Now, the way that Wrike thinks about this right now is that both of these individuals need to say approved for any kind of automations, like changing this to an approved status or moving it forward and like giving it that rubber stamp, right? And if the case is that, well, no, it's just one of us in that scenario, well, then that's fine. Let's just remove whoever didn't make it here first and then go through with the approval process, and then everything will be hunky dory. So keep that in mind. We can also set a time frame parameter for when we want folks to have this done. This is going to help us when we set up some of our widgets, right? So if we want to say, these are the approvals that are due this week, that are due this month, that's going to be important because Wrike isn't looking at this day when we're doing widgets. It's looking at whatever happens to be up here. So I'm going to set this for later and that it's due. Let's go back to the approval. Sorry for that distraction. And then, of course, there are some advanced settings that we can put in here, some additional automation. So if we rubber stamp it and say, yes, this is approved. We're going to change the status to approved. If we say no, this is rejected, we're actually going to go back into the process and go back into production. And maybe that'll automatically reassign this to the designer that's working on it, and they'll get notified that there are changes that need to get done, right? So with all of that in mind, we can say review 3 files. That will kick off an approval process. But I also want to point out that we have something that is called, oh, hold on, let me stop this approval. A guest review. This is going to be really handy for folks who have external client or external stakeholders that need to review this artwork. We can start a guest review and put their email in. I'm going to spell my own name at the end of the day. Give them a lovely name. We can send them a message, update our subject. No, I'm not supposed to type what I'm saying. There are some options that we have over here. We can allow the guest to download the files. Maybe we want them to see the different versions depending on who this person is. And this one's highly debatable depending on who you are. Also see any internal comments about what's going on with that asset. We can give them access to this for a certain amount of time. We can even customize that. And we can also set a password and protect this even further so that you have that level of security in case it gets forwarded to the wrong person. You can protect yourself with that there as well. So when we set off an approval guest review, that's going to send an email out to that person. They're going to see the email, and it's going to, let me make this to myself so that I can show you guys what it looks like when an approval process happens. So they'll get an email and a big old button to review. And as soon as I hit this, it's going to be the same thing. Oh gosh, sorry, not approve. Getting ahead of myself. Apologize. Okay, I would like to review it. This is what is shown, whether you are inside of Wrike and logged in or not. Basically, everything from the gray down is presented to whoever is selected as the approver. We have our basic markup tools down here at the bottom. At the top, we can see any versions that we might want to put together, any comments. So we're going to be a good Wrike citizen and maybe I'm going to make a comment here and say something about this should be gold. Now, who's supposed to do that? I should probably also follow through and tag one of my designers on this. Do Evelyn since her picture works. We want to make sure we're at mentioning folks so that they know you want them to do the thing, right? That way we get a good paper trail here of comments and what needs to happen. If I upload a new version, we can compare those versions here, make comments, or sorry, we can edit the file, which we'll talk about here when we get to Adobe Creative Cloud. We can lock editing on this, download every file, every asset that's physically uploaded here has its own permalink as well. So I'm going to approve this, even though I said we need changes. You can see here that the checkbox has shown up that this has been approved. We can see who did the approval and at what time. What's also really nice is that this and the comment shows up in our paper trail. If I scroll down slowly, that this one has been approved. We've made a comment to Evelyn. We can kind of move forward with that. Any comments or questions so far about that?
Kim, that's pretty cool. One question, however, and I might put you on the spotlight on this one. It's one that we've heard before, but we want to hear what best practices or suggestions on how you might have 3 or 4 approvers, and they've got to be in order.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good one. So one of the ways that you could manage that for now while we are, working on improving things there is really leveraging maybe a different kind of approach to how you set up your status workflows. And this is also probably a discussion about making sure that you have space level workflows if you're going to be creating an approval specific kind of approach here. So sometimes what I see is that maybe we have a group, a certain workflow approval for the copywriters and who needs to approve on the copywriting team. And then that needs to get handed over to the design. And then the creative directors have their persons and approvals that need to be set up. And then we kind of hot potato it across the board like that. And in combination with some automations, what we can do is set up perhaps like an approval workflow that is specific for approvals for that team, for that product, client, brand. And then in here, when we have an internal review, then we could probably come in here and find my creative director, Alan, and say when we have an internal review, but when it's external, and maybe this is for a particular brand or product, we want to make sure that it is Jean, who's the campaign manager for that particular approval process, as an external stakeholder becomes part of that. And then we would marry that with an automation that would tie this in, that once she says approved, we change the status to the next workflow, which is some advanced Wriking. So we're not going to get into that detail today, but there, in the words of Dumb and Dumber, there's a chance, right? So that would be not the most simplest approach to doing sequential approvals, but that's one way. And then the final way would be to set up subtasks in here where the approvers can come in, and you either attach the file to the subtask here or you provide hyperlinks to the item and where to do the approval in that way. Complex stuff. That's what my answer is. Any other questions? Otherwise, I can segue to automations because that is one of the things I've got on my list.
It might be, yeah, that might be a good segue to automations. And Christy, I want to spend a little more time with you on your approvals workflow. I think there's certain parameters that you want to consider, I guess, as part of it. If you have got a structured or a hierarchy kind of
Hierarchical.
style, yeah. If you've got that kind of flow, there's automation is probably the best way to kind of handle it, where you kind of hand it from one person to the next, I guess. And so, yeah, over to you, Kim.
So yeah, with that in mind, here's another opportunity. So if you have an automation that you'd like to see me stumble my way through live, you're more than welcome to send that over to Alex, and we'll do our best to walk you through that. But automations and combinations with approvals can be super handy. So let's see here. I've got one already made here. I'm just going to dip into that here with the assumption that y'all have at least a little bit of an understanding that automations are a trigger. Something is going to happen inside of Wrike. There might be some conditions involved, and once that is true, then we're going to take an action and do something, have a follow-up. So in that case here, we are applying this rule to our print asset custom item type. I'll remove that there, and you can see we can choose any of the custom item types, or we can keep it high level with a specific task or project. Do keep in mind, though, that this is not all encompassing, that if you choose project, that you'll get all of the project custom item types, because that is not the case. So we're going to choose print asset. We can choose to have this in the entire space. So right, take a look everywhere inside this environment, or we want to get very specific with where we want you to perform this particular action. We can localize that there if we want to. So here, right, take a look at all the print assets specifically in this location. And if the status of any of these changes, that's our trigger. I'm going to remember what I've got here and delete that. So we can add a trigger, and there's a lot of different triggers here. And some of them that are specific to this conversation are if an approval starts, or if a decision is given, or if the approval is finalized with the decision. We can use that as a trigger as well. In this case, though, I'm using the creative workflow stakeholder review. When the status changes to this stakeholder review specifically, skip over the condition for now. We're keeping this simple. I would like to assign let them know that they need to assign the approver and start the approval process, specifically the creative director. Now, what's nice about this approach is that one of our best practices is that we should have whoever's assigned to the task be the person that's like directly responsible for it. And creative directors are kind of that unique blend where they need to be let in on what's going on and keep an eye on things, but they're not necessarily the one that's responsible for creating the deliverable or that asset, right? And so this might be a nice way to keep your reporting clean, your dashboards clean, and knowing specifically who's doing what so that Alan doesn't show up everywhere, but he's still kept inside the loop, to let him know that he actually has an action item here to trigger who should be responding to this approval, right? So that's the example that I've got there pre-written. Alex, have we any suggestions? Has anybody got something they'd like to say?
Yeah, nothing specific in that way,
Mhm.
although, here we go, just come through. Is it possible to have an automation which changes the status of a task from on hold to new when the start date approaches?
Yeah,
It'd be helpful to have employees who have many tasks, pre-assigned tasks months in advance. Um, sorry, it's an off-topic of this question. No, it's a pretty on-topic, I say.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Managing assets, right?
yeah,
So quick plug before I have you repeat that to me. We do have a section in the automations area specifically towards approvals, and they can give you some lovely ideas and quick starts on how to get right to some of those approval items. If you're like, "Oh, I'm not sure what we can do, this way to maybe inspire you a little bit. But back to the question, custom rule. I heard something around. Let's do print asset. Let's do it
so
in
we're
the
saying if the task is sitting in on hold, can we change it to being new when the start date approaches?
okay.
So they might have a backlog of tasks with start dates that are coming up in 2, 3 months. And then as we get closer to it, we want to be able to change that status to new.
Let's do 30. Right. So the trigger that I selected there was when the status does not change, right? So from there, we can come in and select if we're in stakeholder review. So we've made it past the creative director. We're off to the requester now. And maybe I think 30 is a little bit generous here. Let's get this down to a more reasonable time frame. Um, if they went on vacation, they just forgot, things kind of slipped. So we give them a couple weeks. Maybe this is a very long running campaign that we've got a lot of lead time on to get done. We'll say the stakeholder, we haven't changed it in 14 days. Then we're going to change, where is it at? Change the item status, right? We're going to select this and go, let's do meeting required, right? Because now things we got to talk about things. Timelines have slipped. The timeline for approval has passed, and the team needs to discuss your new deliverable deadline. All right, so we're going to do the author because that's the person who requested it. We're going to clue in the creative director so he knows why his designer is getting pulled in. So that's the assignee as well. That seems pretty lovely there. I really like the automations that we can stack up action items, right? And then don't forget your good naming conventions at the top. Creative Services 1.0, and this is going to be stake. That the status doesn't change in 14 from stakeholder review. Yeah, that looks good. What do you think,
Nice.
Alex? Did I get all the points?
I think so. That's a good one, but there was one key piece. So let's hit create, and I wanted to kind of give Tony a heads up. So it was the trigger here was specifically on the start date approaching.
Start
Uh,
date coaching. Oh,
yeah. So
so sure. Hmm,
if
hmm, hmm. So
date is
it,
approaching, so
mhm.
it was. I think we can change that due date to start date, and then so we'd have the start date of this task coming up, and then I guess Tony question is how many days before. Do you want to be notified about it? So maybe 2 days before the start date. And so I think if I understand Tony's scenario a little bit better, Kim, I think what we've got going on is we'll have a backlog of all the tasks. We'll put them as start dates being in, August. Another one is another batch for September. And then as we get closer to those start dates, because I'll just sit there on hold until those dates close up by. And as we get closer to those dates, we want to then change them to being new. And then at which point we want to notify folks that, hey, this is all kicking off. Let's make it happen. Yeah, perfect. And I've got another request here where someone would like to have an automation that when the status is changed, the next task will have the status for the start and notifying the assignee for that next task. Um, so Christy, it's a great request, a great question. I don't think we'll be able to handle that particular kind of automation where there's nothing to it, unless it's a subtask or a sub item, there's nothing to intrinsically connect those two, essentially. I'm assuming you're connecting those via a predecessor chain. So if that's the case, yep, all predecessor status changes too. So we could say if that's the case, yeah, if that task finishes, then um, the next task will have the starting to notify the assignee. Yeah, I don't think
So,
we can change the date on it on that predecessor task though, Kim. We can certainly
no,
notify the next person, but it
no
won't be the
changing.
assignee of that task. It'll be the assignee of the task that it's on at the moment. It's a good kind of scenario though.
So we want to, if the previous task is done, the next person, we want an automation that says you're ready to get work, but you also want to change the status as well. Is that
Um, when the status is changed, the next task will have the status for starting. Yeah. So the next task will similar notion where it'll go from being on hold to in progress, I guess.
Yeah, so you could leverage the predecessor status has changed, but only if you've got the dependency hooked up. And just as a reminder for folks on the call that in the back end for your email preferences, we do have at the very, very bottom, user by user, there is this next task in queue is ready to be started as a hey, kid. Kim finished baking her pie early. Let's go ahead and get the ice cream started right away, so that get things going as quickly as possible. So there is
Yeah.
that option that you can kind of creatively maybe leverage that in combination with something here to get the notification out to folks that they should be ready to go.
Yeah. I think that might be the best way to handle that, Christy. Conscious of time here as well. Kim,
Should we get into Creative Cloud?
let's get into Creative Cloud.
Exciting. All right. So let's take a quick look at this. If you have not set this up or don't know what we're talking about, we're going to go up to our avatar here at the top on our profile and settings. I'm going to scroll down to apps and integrations, and you can search if you want, but it's right here. We've got the Creative Cloud extension. Get extension, install extension, technology happens. There's things that will show up. I'm about to walk you through it. This is what we're compatible with. Today, I'm going to walk you through the Illustrator version one of it. Once you get the extension installed, I believe Creative Cloud is going to pop up. It's going to ask you to install it over there as well. That's what will trigger. And then once you're there, let's make sure we're all kind of navigated to the same place here. I'm going to go into my backlog creative. And we've got some of our items up here that we can recognize. And I'm going to drag my Illustrator over. And once you've installed it through Creative Cloud, the way that you get it to appear inside of your chosen software is we're going to go up into Window, excuse me, and we're going to go over to Extensions. And here we're going to see that Wrike is listed there as one of the extensions. I've got that selected and turned on. Once you see that little green check bar here and you turn it on, it's going to ask you to log in provide your credentials, give it all of the permissions, and say, yes, you want to connect all of the dots. And what we get here is a little bit of a my to do and things that I've seen recently. So, of course, my to do is anything that is assigned to you. And then recent is anything that you've interacted with lately. We can see here that I've got infographic hot dog is open and my friend Cosmo Kramer has been uploaded here. Now, this is nice where for my creatives, this is where we reduce that tech swap fatigue. If you're able to either through the comments, again, we're using the proofing and approvals, the comments are coming through so that we can see, oh, somebody said that we need to change this and Cosmo needs to look more dramatic or whatever the case may be. I can have that file open of Cosmo Kramer, see what those edits and things that need to happen are right here from within the panel. And I don't have to have Wrike open on another window or in another place to see what those edits are and be switching back and forth. It's all in one place right here. Additionally, with descriptions, if we've got banner parameters, file formats that we need to be cognizant of for this particular task, and that's in the description area, we can see all of that here as well. It's nice that if I'm a designer and this was, let's say, in production and I'm ready to change this over once I upload my files to trigger this so my creative director can review it, I can change the statuses here as well. And then, of course, what's nice about the add to task is that directly from here, if I'm working on a beautiful art file, which this blank page certainly fits the bill, I can come in and define what kind of file it is that I would like to upload, any additional parameters about that, and then it will get attached here as well. And then I would see that inside of the task inside of Wrike. Take me to it, please. It's not going to do there. Show me the window. There we go. And so here that hyperlink has taken me straight to the task. And if I had uploaded a new version of it, my colleagues who are maybe not working inside of Illustrator will see that new version is here. The status would change and any automations that we have kicking off would go into effect there. That's a quick down and dirty on that. Comments, thoughts, questions?
No comments, no questions. Nothing at this point, Kim.
Okay. Well, that's the meat and nuts of what I have for everyone today. Probably teased a couple extra features and details that you'll probably want to check back in on for some future sessions. But I'll take a drink of water and take a breath and see if anything comes in. But other than that, I'm done. Wrap it up.
Got a question come through. Let me have a quick read of this. What if I save my files to a parent task, but have design information in subtasks? How could I possibly go about seeing the design information in subtasks up to the parent? It's a great question. There's probably, I mean, the parent task will come up, so you will have to click through the subtasks to see the details of it. But
One way that
yeah,
you can work through that potentially is leveraging custom fields to pull some of that data into the table view. So we have the ability in the request form that when we ask for some dimensions or some aspect ratios, for example, that information can be put into the description area of the task as well as into some of these custom fields. And so, yes, the data comes in at the top level, but if you're leveraging blueprints, right, and people are using the request forms where they say, yes, I would like some YouTube added to my campaign here, that this is kind of pre-baked into it. We know that we're not going to get into some weird ratios and resolutions, both ours for YouTube, right? So we can start to pre-bake some of that information into our blueprints, and then in that way, if it maybe didn't come through at the parent level, or maybe in this case, the career service team doesn't even see the context right now of this campaign called Extra Unseen, but they know what they need to deliver on at a glance here. So that might be a nice bridge for kind of seeing the stuff you need to see.
Yeah, great suggestion there. Thanks, Kim. Okay, well, I might take it off you then, if that's okay.
Yep.
Hit share screen on my side and have that smooth transition. Give that another minute or so for Q&A. If anyone has anything they'd like to put through, welcome into the questions, the Q&A section, or in the chat. Another second or so. All right. Well, on that note, wanted to give folks, of course, as we wrap this up, give you a heads up, of course, that there are a stack of resources available to you. There's our support team who are there to help you out with pretty much every question, to be honest, under the sun. They will help you with anything, but think of them as a resource where, hey, I was able to do this yesterday. Now, for whatever reason, it isn't. Or, hey, this approval flow isn't doing what I thought it would do, maybe, perhaps. Reach out to them. Customer success managers are there to ensure that you're seeing value out of the platform. Our Wrike Discover page is full of courses. It is PMP certified, project management, something, right? Certified. So if you're trying to get points and keep your certification, head to there. Those courses have been given the thumbs up. Of course, there's our help page, which has an article on practically every single piece of information that there is in Wrike. Of course, account managers who are there to ensure that they can bridge the gap and pull in people wherever you need to as well. And one of the folks that our account managers can pull in are our professional services team, the likes of Kim Cameron, who is an absolute legend, is an absolute weapon when it comes to putting or assembling your Wrike instances. They will help you build. They will help you consult with you on putting together a Wrike space that just makes sense for your particular scenario. There's a stack of different ways of putting Wrike together, but our professional services team are experts in their field. They will help streamline your workflows and put together better collaborations and effective implementations, and more than anything, a sooner return on an investment, right? We see this time and time again with our professional services teams and with new customers getting on board with Wrike, where they come on board, they put it together themselves, and they figure it out for themselves for the most part, and that's great. But it's taken them now 3 to 6 months, or even longer sometimes, to kind of make that happen. Our PS team can kind of ramp that up much quicker with you and ensure that your team adopts it in the best possible way. Kim, is there anything else there that I'm missing? Is there anything else I should mention?
I know we focused on creative services and marketing teams today, but our whole entire professional services team runs the gamut for any kind of industry and application that you might want to put Wrike to the test to. So don't think that the advice and tips that I've given out today are specific to the one industry. They are best practices that are applicable broadly.
Great shout out. Good mention there. Thanks, Kim. And of course, thank you so very much, Kim, for doing an incredible job today. As always, really appreciate you going through all that information with us, all that functionality in depth as well. And thank you to all of those that have joined the session today. Thank you all for your input, for your questions. Really appreciate you all coming along.